and again, just to give everybody a little bit more context, I think the article was really about what movie studios have done in the past with the waterfall strategy. But I'll stop talking. Wanna ask you to kind of just give a little bit more context for those that haven't read as to what the article was about and kind of why you think that's an important strategy to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on when it comes to just basically copying what's happening in the film world, right? In the movie world, and what you see there is the opposite of what we should be doing in the music world. So in the film world, you see these windows contracting. Last December, all throughout the last year, everything is about films not going into theater. But going straight to these SVOD platforms, Paramount Plus is coming out. We have Warner with their HBO Max. We have Disney, etc., etc. So everybody has their own platform, and those windows are shrinking. But when it comes to music, and especially with live streaming, we have no windows, and live streams are often made just as a one-off, and that's it. Part of the reason for that is, of course, the rights. If you do something live, you have to get involved with a lot less of, IP and rights clearing and stuff like that. And if you want to make something available on demand afterwards, you have to clear everything conceivable from the last 100 years of rights. And
I see Matt just chomping at the bit over there. Like, yep, yep.
And this is basically the premise, right? So if you have a live stream, think about what you want to do with it afterwards. So you look at the big stars of the past year, so Dua Lipa, but even slightly smaller acts like a Laura Marling or a Nick Cave. What happens if you put that live stream out again? Or what happens if you do it live, ticketed, of course, and then you put it out on a major SVOD platform, or like a dedicated niche platform that is just for music, right? And then at some point, you make it available somewhere else again. They did this with the Laura Marling performance, the one that she did with Dice, I think, from London, one of the first major ticketed ones, and they did it again on the 31st of January or the 30th of January, and I haven't seen any data yet, but I'm super curious how many tickets were sold in the second run there. But that's the kind of thinking that we're aiming for, and like I was saying in my introduction, there's so much more you can do. You can do a live stream and grab a 5-minute clip, grab a 90-second clip, grab a 10-second clip for all these various platforms that are out there. And that's sort of, generally speaking, the thinking behind the whole waterfall strategy.
Yeah, and the thing that I like about that is it's oftentimes every artist knows that they need to post a lot on social media, right? But over time, you just get completely burnt out because you're like constantly trying to think of these ideas. I think if you're able to take time and map out the strategy of like, hey, I'm going to film this one thing, and then think about how you can chop that up into 20 or 30 different pieces of content, and that'll give you, 2 months worth of stuff. That saves a lot of headache. You're going to spend a little, a week or two developing, strategizing, you spend another week shooting all that stuff, maybe another week like editing all that up. So you kind of have a month right there. But then if that sets you up for 2 or 3 months worth of content, I think that's a great way to, again, really start to build out a business. And that's what a lot of artists don't think about. They're just like, oh, I know I have to post there, but I got to make music too. And they're trying to do too much all at once. So if they can take a step back and think of that long-term strategy, I think it'd be beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's, so the article was really, it went into like the major players, right? And they of course have big budgets, large production crews, access to great studios, etc., etc. So there's actually, I'm going to write a follow-up article that's more going towards emerging artists and more like a how-to of what you need to do if you're not Dua Lipa or BTS or Billie Eilish,
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like the best segue into this next question. Within the article, you were talking about hot and cold media. Can you explain a little bit more about what that means and how artists that are just starting out with limited budgets can actually create higher quality content,
Yeah.
or even, if they have to do that just starting out?
Well, yeah, I mean, and this goes back to what Christina was saying as well. It's like Marshall McLuhan is like the godfather of cultural studies, right? Of media studies. He wrote most of his stuff in the 50s and 60s. I studied cultural studies, so he's like this beacon.
Yeah.
Keeps coming back, and he's always right. So this thing with hot and cold media is really so like hot media is like low participation. So a live stream where there's no interaction, people are just watching, or his example was listening to the radio. Cool media is like high participation, but not necessarily super high production values, but a lot of interaction. Like his example would be talking to a friend on the phone. Our example right now would probably be Clubhouse. But yeah, you have to think about the different ways in which you do that. So if you are one of those people that live streams a lot, right? If you're one of those artists that went and sat down and went on Twitch or YouTube or whatever platform you use, and you just did that a couple of times a week, you can do that, and that's great. And there's a lot of interaction, and you get tips and all that sort of stuff. And then maybe one time you invest and you go to like a proper studio and you think of a whole concept, and you pay a little bit more money, but you get a much better product that you can use in a lot of different places.
Yeah, and that again just kind of harkens back to what we were talking a minute ago. Really, just trying to strategize better and say, if I'm gonna spend a bunch of money, with the limited amount of money I do have, how long can I make this stretch? And
Yeah.
I don't really think artists were thinking about that in deep terms, especially now people just starting out, even before the pandemic. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the benefits of this, because it's like you really have to like sit down and think about, because you can't go anywhere else, like, how can I make this stuff last? I don't have any money. What can I do with the little bit I do have, or how do I save up money? And to me, I think a lot of these are all creative problems to solve. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, great, you don't have enough money, but that doesn't mean you can't be creative. And I think oftentimes people just say, well, I don't have money, so I can't do it. And it's like, a lot of times, think about the best parties you ever went to when you were younger. It was like, there was no money. You know what I mean? It was just people getting together, throwing in 10, 20 bucks or whatever they could to like make some cool shit. So like, how can you do that right now? And there's definitely ways to do it. Maybe it's just like you said, saving up a couple $100 and going to a nice studio and filming a whole bunch of stuff in there. You're doing like your live studio session in there. Studios need money, so it's cheaper now anyway. So that's a great investment. And, while you're there, it's like, you really have to think of it from a production standpoint. What photos are you going to take for your photo shoot? What TikToks can you create while you're there? You're really trying to maximize your time. So it's not like, oh, I'm just doing this to be cool and be in the studio, and maybe it's like you spend, another hour or two in there recording new material as well that kind of gets you set up for the next one as well, and you create some behind the scenes footage with that. And it's
and maybe they can do multi-track recording, and,
right.
and if you spend it doesn't take that much money to do some overdubbing, and you have another release on Spotify as well, so